Hello, and you are listening to the Tech and Tonic podcast, episode 17 of our season 2. This is a show where we talk about all things tech and discuss all things tech if you're new to the show. Okay, and you're joining me today with Darwin and Jeevan again to talk about tech. You know, last week was really quiet.
Relatively quiet.
Quiet. Yeah, for tech, we don't really know or understand why that's the case, but it was relatively quiet for the week. But at least there's still some exciting things that happened lah. Among one of those things is Spotify. They've just decided that they needed to acquire another company because they want to make their brand a podcast brand as well, not just, music streaming. So they bought pods to make, podcast discovery easier. They're going to integrate that later on, but for now, that's all we need to know. And how much that will go, we don't know yet. But Spotify is one of the biggest podcast platforms that we know of. Well, we are on Spotify anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah. Samsung also launched a new gaming monitor, but Samsung has been launching like curved gaming monitors. This time, their Odyssey gaming monitor is flat for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they said they're expanding the lineup, not really announcing new versions of the monitors. But yeah, there's 4 new monitors if I'm not mistaken. Just different specifications, refresh rates, different sizes. Their flagship for this year is 28 inches QHD with 165 hertz refresh
That's
rate.
kind of expected, right, from Samsung. I mean, Samsung is one of the biggest monitor makers in the world, and considering they are one of the best also, right? So
Yeah.
kind of expected, I guess. It's just that we didn't really expect them to like launch flat screen gaming screens because they have always been championing curved screens. And we kind of like curved screens also lah, like bigger factor curved screens.
I think they're reserving their curved screens for their super wide monitors like last year's launches.
The ultra wides, the ultra wide. The 49-inch that they had last year.
Yeah, and this year is all like the smaller form factors. They're like, okay, for those of you who want smaller screens, this is it.
Yeah. Anyway, they also had a similar QHD display that I think they launched towards the end of last year or earlier this year. It's also a 28-inch, but it's not a 165 hertz. And we were very interested to buy those. But anyway, Dell also came into the news last week, not with a new device, although that would be nice, but they actually opened a new solar power plant to save the earth. Well, they had this whole carbon emission thing that they are trying to achieve. But yeah. So this is one step.
Yeah, so they didn't launch a new power plant. They just added solar panels to their current building in Penang.
Oh, right. Okay.
So apparently that will power the building's yearly power consumption by about 25%, I think.
Yeah, well, it's all part of making their plants, making their operations more green, right? So
yeah,
that's always a good thing. Garmin launched the new Forerunner 55 last week. It's about the same as the Forerunner 45, except it's slightly newer. It's got a little bit more functions, a little bit more exercise tracking, and just newer in general for 960 ringgit. Still not exactly cheap, but to us, Garmin makes some of the better smartwatches and fitness trackers currently so far.
Yeah, they definitely do.
Lenovo last week was quite active because of Mobile World Congress, which is sort of happening kind of quietly. They launched new ThinkPad laptops and ThinkVision monitor, and the one that we're really excited about is their ThinkPad X1 Extreme. Is that correct? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the correct name. And
Yeah.
it comes with an RTX 3080, that's the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3080, and an Intel Core i9 up to, okay? So it's very, very powerful. It sounds like a gaming laptop, but it's actually not. It's actually a work laptop, and it's very stealth. So we kind of like the idea.
Yeah. I kind of like what we're seeing this year with laptops. Like they're getting slimmer and slimmer. And
Yeah,
the more powerful laptops are not in your face anymore. They are like very down low. If you don't know the specs, you won't really know that it is a super powerful laptop.
it's very stealth. That's what we like. That's what we kind of like, because we can
Yeah.
just bring them to like work and stuff like that, and don't have to worry about people giving you funny looks because you're working with a gaming laptop. It doesn't look like a gaming laptop. It's not a gaming laptop, but you can use it to game. That's the best part. With UHD screens some more, that's kind of a big deal there,
Oh,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, they also finally launched their Lenovo Legion Phone Dual 2 in Malaysia. This is kind of like 2 months in a working progress, I guess. I mean, it's due to kind of, I think, they didn't say this, but in theory, I think it was because of the whole global shortage thing with the chips and stuff like that. But at the same time, a bit late, don't you think?
Yeah, but also I think the pandemic actually played into it because getting stock seems to be a problem across the board for any
Mm,
device. So
yeah,
I think with Malaysia going into lockdown again and getting extended again, we're going to see a lot more delays moving forward.
yeah, but you also have to keep in mind that the shortages is not really just due to the pandemic. It's a lot of things.
Yeah.
There's a global chip shortage just because everyone wants one, right?
Yeah.
And there was a shipping delay some weeks back, and you can't even recover from that. I don't even know when we can recover from that. But yeah, it's the pandemic just makes the whole situation even worse because we can't get things. Anyway, Lenovo Legion Phone Dual 2 is finally now in Malaysia, and you can get it for 3,299 ringgit. That's for the 12 gigabyte RAM and 256 gigabyte of storage version. There's another one that's 16 gigs and 512 gigs of storage, and that goes for 3,699, somewhere there. Yeah. Another big thing also really happened last week. Like, we were very excited for this because some leaks came out, obviously, and now we get to talk about it a little bit. Windows 11 is finally officially launched or announced, I would say. It's not launched because the devices that runs Windows now still haven't you still can't update them to Windows 11, but they finally
Yeah.
announced it, right?
Yeah, but that update is coming really soon, like in October.
Yeah. If you want to check whether your device is eligible for Windows 11, there is some ways to do it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on or next week. Okay, but yeah, Windows 11. I think I kind of like it. Like, there are a lot of things that I thought was very, very sensible on Windows part, on at least Microsoft's part, to include in Windows 11.
Yeah, and I actually like the steps they are taking to make
Hmm.
Windows a little bit more cross interaction. You can use
Hmm.
it with a keyboard, a mouse, a touchpad, or even your touch screen, and
Yeah.
it
Well,
makes
basically your fingers, lah.
yeah, and it makes so much more sense with a lot of the optimizations they're doing with Windows 11 at this point, because to be very frank, a lot of us are using touchscreens already in our laptops.
Yeah,
It's about
and
time.
that's the thing that Windows 10 wanted to solve, right? Because when Windows 10 was launched and we saw the demo and things like that, we thought, oh, okay, they're trying to make everything a bit more touch friendly, like touch based UI friendly, because everything just looks a bit more streamlined and a little bit more friendly towards styluses. But in a sense, it didn't work a lot of the time. It was still the basic Windows that we know, and it's still best to use keyboard and mouse to work with it. And on Windows 11, I think the whole philosophy of Windows 11 is touch-based interaction. We don't really see, during the demo at least, we don't really see keyboards and mouse lying around. They were mostly using the Windows 11 tablets as
Yeah.
a demo device, which is, I think, kind of cool, especially when they shifted the whole start taskbar menu towards the middle. A lot of people might argue that that looks kind of like Mac, and I will say yes, but at the same time, for users to touch, for your fingers to touch around and stuff like that, that actually looks a lot more natural. Like everything's more centralized, and that's where your fingers usually will rest.
Yeah, and the thing about Windows 11, it doesn't look like they are going and forgetting their core users who use keyboards and mice with their Windows, but
Hmm.
they are also enhancing Windows visually and also with the touch interactions. It's not an either or like what we had with Windows 8 and Windows 10.
Yeah. Well, you forgot Windows 7 also, right? Well,
Ah,
Vista,
yes, that one
basically.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's really, really cool. I also think that it's really cool that they are now finally admitting that they are not the only operating system that people use on their daily device, right? They finally realize that Android is a very, very big thing, right? They obviously, if you're talking about Apple iPhones, it's a bit difficult because Apple is a bit stuck up with their system. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe that's not the right word.
They're a
They
walled
have a
garden.
closed software ecosystem. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be right to say. And Android is a little bit more open source, right? So it's easier to integrate Windows and Android together. We've always wondered why they've never done that, but they finally are bringing like the two operating system together. You can finally run Android apps on Windows, which is really
Yeah.
cool. You don't need an emulator anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Which means that we can technically be using a lot of our productivity suites and uh Android apps which we
on our
use
desktop.
on our desktop. I think one of the things that both of us were excited about was the return of widgets
Oh
because
yes.
I think both of us might be the odd ones out that actually used widgets when it was a thing on Windows.
Yeah, it was a thing on Windows 7. I didn't really go through Windows 8. Never went through that phase because Windows 8 was very short lived, to be fair.
Yeah.
And Windows Vista and 7 was the longest thing that stood between XP and Windows 10, right? Windows XP and Windows 10. And when they introduced widgets on Windows 7, Vista and 7, we kind of liked it. We used it a lot. We thought that it was a great way to organize information, and now it's back. And it looks more relevant than ever, I
Yeah,
think.
and I like the way that it has its own space that you can pull
Mm,
up when you need it, and it's not
yeah.
always in your face anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't actually disturb you when you're trying to look at your clean desktop because it actually does look like you can make it a lot cleaner with a more comprehensive start menu now, right?
Yep. And you don't have live tiles on start, which I am actually excited about suddenly.
I wasn't a very big fan of Lifestyles when I started using it. That's the thing. Lifestyles was a great thing when it comes to the mobile phone operating system, like the Windows Phone, and I thought it would be a clever thing in tablets, but it doesn't really work for desktop PCs. I just can't. I don't understand why. It just doesn't really work for me on desktop PCs. At least that's my problem.
It just made the start menu a bit too clunky for me.
Yeah, it does look like that, but it does work on a touch platform. So we'll see what is what with Windows 11, and we'll actually take a deep dive for on Windows 11 next week. So look out for next week's show. This week's show, what I really want to talk about is something that we said last week, we've pointed out last week, and I think a lot of people, or at least we want to tell people how we started the podcast or how we do the podcast is the tech that we use for the podcast. And let's start with how we recorded our first show. Jeevan, do you remember?
Yes, we actually had our guest Jeremy Teo in, and I think what we did was we shared a Zoom H5, both of us,
Mm-hmm.
and Jeremy had the H1 to himself.
Yeah, so we didn't have a proper setup at the time lah. Okay, we just had like two recording microphones that we use for our videos, or for events when we need a video, or not video, an audio recording, right? Or even interviews that we did way before. We've never really done a podcast before then, and we didn't know whether we should invest in gear to do a podcast in the office. So yeah, we took what we had and we tried doing something with it for that one. And then after that, we went out to get some better gear lah. Obviously,
Yeah.
uh, after that, we actually started using an audio interface from Behringer, the UMC 404 HD. I think that's the correct one. Yes, and two MXL 440. No, actually, we had three
Yeah,
MXL
3.
440 mics. Yeah, and those sound amazing after we struggled to set it up for an hour.
Yeah, we were going under tables and pulling wires
Hmm.
and dealing with computers not responding.
Yeah, but at least it actually helped us, record better podcasts in the coming weeks, leading to MCO actually.
Yeah, and then came the dreaded MCO.
Yeah, and we were back to our very rudimentary setup. Like Jivan had to use the H5, which presents its own issues actually, because the H5 has a very weird record. The zooms, especially, right, has very weird recording mechanisms and quirks. Because
Yeah.
even with the Zoom H1 that I'm using, right, I don't know whether you face this problem. I know I've heard this problem from you also, that when you're recording the voice, it doesn't sound like you. It sounds like a squirrel version of you.
Yeah, and I think for me it had a problem where my voice became super deep.
Ah, yeah, that too. It sounded like you became Darth Vader for
Yeah,
some
and
reason, right?
for if you want to understand what we mean, when I was on the creators podcast with Julian, I actually sounded so different. When I heard the
Yeah,
podcast back, I was like, is that actually me?
yeah. We can link the podcast in our YouTube link. So if you are listening to this on Spotify, you can actually head out to our YouTube channel and find this podcast and find the link somewhere in the description, and you can hear what it sounds like. But anyway, it was rudimentary when we all got home. Because we only had one audio interface in the office,
Yeah.
so it was basically between me taking it home or Jivan taking it home. And because at the time the software is already set up on my PC, I took it home. But we came back to the office for like a month or two, and I set everything up back again, and then MCO happened again.
Yeah, but I think one of the saving graces was that we received the Razer Siren Mini for review
Yeah,
during
the
that time.
Riser, the Razer Siren Mini.
Yep.
It's not the Razer Siren X, right? The Razer Siren X is a bigger, more bulky version of it's the full size streaming mic version of this little Razer Siren Mini. And that came with like its own dials, its own mixer kind of thing. You can control volumes from there. This one doesn't. It looks like a very, very small pill mic, and I kept thinking, like, I told Jivan that I want to review this, but I'm not sure how good this will be for a podcast mic or a streaming mic or whatnot. It's so small. It's such a
Yeah.
small, like, little thing. It doesn't even look like a mic
Yeah,
at first.
and the thing about it is because it's so rudimentary, I think a lot of our quirks and problems dealing with setup or volume and stuff like that was actually minimized with the Siren Mini.
Yeah, because it's just a plug and play mic, right? Now, currently, like for the past year, we've been recording. Well, for me at least, for the past year, we've been recording the podcast using this mic. I didn't actually bring back the audio interface that we have in the office. I don't even have the mic at home anymore. It's still in the office. It's stuck there. It's imprisoned there because we can't move or we can't go there technically. But yeah, I've been recording this show with the Razer Siren Mini for the past year, and you tell me how it sounds. To me, it sounds good.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, it sounded really good that even I forked out money to get my own
Yeah.
because
Well,
it just made sense.
yeah, and well, Jivan was also asking me about a permanent mic setup that he can use for both gaming and doing podcasts because while the Razer H5 can sound good, there is a little bit of problem with setting it up, and then sometimes even when he comes online on Discord, he sounded like a chipmunk. If he doesn't sound like a chipmunk, he sounds like
Darth Vader.
a very big bear for some reason. I don't know why, right? Doesn't sound very good. So
Yeah,
and he has to keep removing the mic from the mic stand and stuff like that because the H5 is not small. It's quite big.
yeah, it's very clunky compared to the Seren Mini.
Yeah. So when he asked me like, "Hey, I want to do like I want to get a setup for podcast like a plug and play solution," and I told him like I'm using the Siren Mini, and the review has come out by the way on our site if you want to check it out. But it works. It's really good. I like it. It's easy to set up. You just have to plug in the micro USB cable to one end and the other end to the PC, and you don't really need to set up anything because this is not recognized by the Razer Synapse app on your PC, and Windows just recognizes this pill of a thing as a mic, and it's very
Yep.
easy to set up. You just have to control your volumes there. You can't control the volumes on the mic itself, but it sounds good. It actually sounds loud enough that we actually have to turn down the mic volume on Windows PC
Yeah,
on Windows settings.
and I think both of us are at 65% right now.
Yeah, and it sounds pretty good still. I mean, if you want to know more about how the mic sounds in real world comparison or in real world conditions where your mic is not like right in your face, you can check out the review because I've tested all of them, all the volume range, not all the general volume range, 1 feet away from the mic itself. Because naturally, when you're streaming and you're playing games, you don't want your mic to be right in front of your face, right? And the
Yeah,
Razer Siren Mini is made mostly for streaming or streamers, you know.
yeah, and it's actually not too bad, even like if you're recording vocals for singing and stuff like that. It's quite clear.
It is. It is actually not too bad. You can record vocals, and I've tried recording my guitar with this actually. It's 1 feet away as well. Okay, you can actually hear it on the review. Again, I'm plugging in our review. I hope you don't mind. But yeah, you can actually hear it there. You can record instruments with this, and it actually sounds very, very, very clean. It's got
Yeah,
a built-in shock mount also, so that when you knock on it a little bit, it's not going to matter that much. It doesn't
yeah.
make a lot of noise. Yeah.
And I think one of the most important components for our podcasting and also work from home setup is actually the laptops we're using.
Mm.
And I am on a Dell G5 5500. It is actually a very capable laptop. And it's built for
Mm.
gaming as well. It comes with the RTX 2060.
2060.
2060 with an i7 10th generation. And
Nice. Mhm.
aside from a few hiccups here and there, I think it's been performing pretty well. What I've realized is that I cannot update drivers using like Nvidia's drivers. I need to wait for Dell to release a driver.
Oh, that's actually quite odd.
Yeah,
But I mean,
so
it's working well, right?
yeah, I initially like we had a few hiccups where it was a bit overheating and stuff like that, but after Dell's customer support, I have to give it to them. It's really good. They actually send somebody over to look at the PC and replace parts and stuff like that.
Wow, that's actually really good.
Yeah,
That's
so
actually very
I
nice. Yeah.
technically have a brand new PC because they've
Yeah.
replaced everything inside that was giving problems.
Yeah,
And
Jivon was telling me about the service, and the service guy came one time and say, "Oh, it's the board issue. Let me replace the board for you. Oh, is this chip's issue? Let me replace this chip for you. Oh, is the fan's issue? Let me replace the fan for you." So technically, internally, his G5 is brand new.
yeah, so it's technically a brand new G5, and it
Yeah.
hasn't had problems. Like, I do video editing.
Mhm.
I do editing for the podcast.
Mhm.
Sometimes Darwin and me are gaming. We play GTA 5. We just started Divinity Original Sin 2, and we did Phasmophobia. I
Mm.
started Hades as well, and it runs really good. And the thing is, I'm using two displays. I'm using the laptop display and also an external monitor.
Mm.
And temperature wise, it stays within a really good range.
Right.
It's usually below 60 to 70 degrees,
Mm.
depending on how much work or intense work I'm doing with the laptop.
Mm.
And when it's on idle, it is about 57-ish degrees. So
Okay.
I think if you're looking for something that can handle both gaming and work like what we do, the
Mhm.
Dell G5 is actually one of the better ones on the market.
Right, but there are already newer laptops in the market lah. Just to let you know, right? Because I am running an Acer Predator Triton 500, and it's got a GeForce and NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2070 Super, and this is last year's device. These two laptops are last year's device, and to us, or at least in the general consensus, these two are still very very capable laptops to work with. I edit videos endlessly with this thing, even through the weekends and stuff like that. Doesn't stop. And yes, I'm also running two monitors like Jivan. We are running the Prism Plus X270 Pro monitor or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
remember what it's called. Um, but these are 2K monitors, 2K resolution monitors running at 144 hertz. So given the specs, it's still no slouch, okay? But at the same time, there are already newer gaming laptops that has already come with the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 30 series and Intel and AMD's new 5011 generation processors. So if you do have the money, you can spend on that, but keep in mind that they are 30% more expensive this year compared to the previous years because of the stock shortages. And at the same time, because of the stock shortages, it's harder to find them. So
Yeah.
if you're looking for an alternative laptop that can do work for you and you're desperate for it and you have a budget, you still can look for the slightly older one. As long as you're running an RTX 2060 and above, you'll do fine.
Yeah,
Even
and
in
I think
gaming.
I think even for both of us, the cheaper, or rather the slightly older specs, I say older just because as a new generation,
Mm-hmm.
actually work pretty well for us. Like, we don't need the 3080s, 3060s.
Not
They are
yet,
actually,
anyway.
yeah, not yet. And the thing about it is, when it comes to our workload, we generally push the laptops quite a bit.
Hmm.
And they seem to be working pretty well, if you're
So
asking
far.
me.
so
Yeah.
far. So far. They're working nicely. Just really well for
And
now.
they are also eligible for the Windows 11 update.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about Windows Update or the Windows 11 next week. Definitely we'll do a deep dive because it's Windows 11. Windows 10
Yeah,
is so old. I can't actually believe that Windows 10 is this old already.
I think
Like,
it's a decade old already.
yeah. And finally they're releasing Windows 11.
Yeah,
But
they
they have
release.
been updating Windows 10, which is good, you know.
Yeah, they've been updating steadily. Like, I think they just released a huge update, the 21H1 or H2 update,
Mm,
which is meant to bring it introduces a few new features, number one, and it
right.
introduces security patches.
Yeah. So they have
So
been constantly updating Windows 10. If you have not updated your Windows PC or your Windows device, we suggest you do, because like we've always said, even in our security, when when we interview like a security expert or something like that, they keep telling you, hey, update your device. Why? Because it really, really, really protects you with
yeah,
all these security patches and stuff like that. You really want those updates. Okay, you really want to keep your devices updated. So if you're working on a Windows PC like we are, and you've been been pestered by your PC to update your PC, do give some time for your PC to update. Even though you are still working on it and stuff like that, do schedule some time for it to update. It's really important. Save your work and update your PC now lah, basically.
yeah,
Anyway, that is all the time we have today to talk about our gear and our gadgets and how we started, our podcast. So you realize that, our podcast sounded not very good in the first episode. We do have to apologize for that, because we were just starting out. We didn't know what we wanted from the podcast and how we wanted to sound in the podcast. So we just basically tried out with what we have lah, basically at the time,
yeah.
right? But we've evolved to here, and we started with guests. That's what I remember. We had guests almost every week.
Yeah,
We'll try to bring that back again. It's not easy now because it's the pandemic and everyone is everywhere, and it's a bit difficult for everyone to come together to do one podcast. Not to say it's very, very difficult. It's just sometimes it takes time for us to coordinate with them, right? But we are definitely interested to bring back new guests. And if you have any guests that you want us to be interviewing or to or talking to, or to be on the show to discuss all things tech with, we would be happy to hear all of that from your feedback on our website, www.techent.tv, techent.tv, or on all our social media, or even YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and even Instagram as TechENT TV across the channel. TECHENT TV across all of them. Of course, we are also available on Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. So if you can actually, or you want to give us feedback there, we will try to accommodate. We will do our best to, accommodate what you give us, or the feedback that you give us, obviously, right? So that's it for the show, I think.
Yep. I think
that's it for the
all
show.
for this week.
Yeah, that's it for the show. Thank you again for listening. We always appreciate your feedback and your time. We'll see you next week, or we'll talk to you again next week, obviously, about Windows 11. But for now, this is Darwin and Jeevan signing out. Bye bye.
See ya.